stuffy with the scent of rain. Out on the empty two-lane road that cut through the New Mexico desert, Sarah Martinez's old pickup hummed steadily, its headlights carving tunnels of light into the darkness. She had driven this stretch countless times after long shifts, but tonight felt different. In the corner of her vision, something flickered in the sky, a pulsing glow that seemed to dim and intensify, as if struggling against some unseen force. Sarah slowed down, gripping the steering wheel tighter. The light wasn't a plane. It wasn't a helicopter either. It moved erratically, a faltering descent that was controlled just enough to avoid catastrophe. Her pulse quickened. She'd seen emergency landings before, even helped at a few crash sites, but this was unlike anything in her 22 years of responding to accidents. "My God, it's gonna crash," she whispered. The glow dipped behind a ridge 2 miles ahead, vanishing from sight. She waited for the inevitable explosion, the sound of impact, but none came. Only silence. Her training kicked in instantly. If there was an aircraft in distress, there could be survivors, and the first few minutes could mean the difference between life and death. She reached for her portable radio to call in the incident, but all she got was static. She tried again, still nothing. She checked the antenna. Dead air. In 1996, cell phones were rare and expensive, and she didn't own one. "Shit," she muttered, staring at the dark ridge where the light had vanished. She hesitated only a moment. Every protocol said she should drive to the nearest town and report the incident. But her instincts, the ones that had saved lives before, screamed at her to go now. She always carried a comprehensive first aid kit in her truck. Maybe she could make the difference. Maybe she could save someone. Sarah turned off the main road and began the rough trek across dirt trails toward the glow's last known position. It took 20 minutes of careful driving before she saw something that stopped her heart cold. There was no wreckage, no twisted metal, no smell of fuel. Instead, in the center of a clearing, she found a perfect circular area where the vegetation had been bent outward, radiating like a crop circle. She'd never seen anything like this. "What kind of accident does this?" she murmured, stepping out of her truck, flashlight trembling in her hand. And then she saw it, a figure lying motionless in the center of the circle. Sarah's breath hitched as her flashlight beam caught the figure in full. It was tall, maybe 6 feet, but slender, almost fragile. Its skin shimmered faintly, like moonlight on water. The limbs were elongated but elegant, the face peaceful and strangely beautiful, with proportions that weren't entirely human. Her instincts screamed that she was staring at something she shouldn't be seeing, something impossible, but her training as a paramedic overpowered the fear. Injured is injured, she told herself. Whoever or whatever this was, it was clearly in distress. She knelt beside the figure and checked for a pulse. The skin was cool to the touch, faintly luminous, and the pulse, there it was. Slow, steady, but unmistakably real. The being was alive. Then, as her fingers rested lightly against its neck, the creature's eyes opened. They were enormous, deep, and filled with a light that seemed to contain both pain and an ancient calm. Sarah froze, unable to breathe. The creature didn't move, didn't speak, but she heard a voice, not through her ears, but directly in her mind. "Do not fear me. I am injured, and I need your help." Sarah staggered back, heart hammering. You're speaking inside my head," she stammered. "This is how my kind communicates. I understand this is unsettling, but please, help me. There are truths I must share, truths about your people, and about one you call Jesus." The name hit her like a shockwave. Jesus? Of all the things she expected to hear, that was the last. "I don't understand. Who are you?" "My name is Zara. I come from far beyond your world. My vessel was damaged. If I do not receive care, I will not survive. But what I came to share is more important than my life. Your species has forgotten something sacred." Sarah stalled hard,
Fear wrestled with something else, a strange sense of calm radiating from the being. There was no hostility in its presence, only an overwhelming sadness. "I can help," she said finally. "But we need to get you out of here. Someone might see the lights." "I can move, but with assistance." Sarah helped Zara to her feet, surprised at how light she was, almost weightless. Together they stumbled toward the truck. Every step felt unreal, like walking through a dream. When they finally reached her home, a small adobe house tucked into the mountains, Sarah guided Zara into the guest room and began cleaning her wounds. Her readings on her thermometer were nonsensical. Her instruments couldn't make sense of this physiology. But somehow, through silent communication, Zara guided her through each step.
"My kind heals quickly," Zara said in Sarah's mind. "Cleanliness, rest, nourishment, and the presence of love. These are the universal laws of healing." Sarah couldn't help but stare. This was happening. She was tending to an alien being in her home. But through the strangeness, she couldn't shake the echo of Zara's earlier words, the one that struck the deepest chord. Truths about Jesus. She set the bandages down, her voice barely above a whisper. "You said there are things I need to know about him." Zara closed her eyes, her expression distant, almost reverent. "Yes, Sarah Martinez, about the one you call Jesus of Nazareth. Your species remembers only fragments of who he truly was. The truth is far greater and far more beautiful." Sarah leaned in, her heart pounding. "Then tell me." Zara's luminous eyes opened again, and in that instant the room seemed to hum with energy. "To understand Jesus," she said, "you must first understand where he came from." The room felt charged, as if invisible currents pulsed through the air. Sarah sat at the edge of the guest bed, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She was no stranger to crises, but this was different. Her entire worldview felt like it was tilting. Zara's gaze was steady, her voice, though silent, resonating deep within Sarah's mind. "Your species calls him Jesus of Nazareth. We know him as something more. He was not just a teacher, nor merely a prophet. He was what we call a starseed." Sarah blinked. "A starseed?" "A highly evolved consciousness, a soul who voluntarily incarnates on younger worlds to accelerate their spiritual evolution. His mission on your planet was part of a much larger effort, one that began long before your written history." Sarah's heart hammered. She had grown up Catholic, attended church on Sundays with her grandmother. The idea of Jesus as an alien messenger felt blasphemous, and yet Zara's presence radiated a sincerity she couldn't deny. "You're telling me Jesus wasn't human?" she asked, her voice trembling. Zara's eyes softened. "Not exactly. He chose to be human. He incarnated fully into your world, took on its limitations, its pain, its joy. But his consciousness came from beyond. He was a being who transcended planetary origins. His soul had walked the stars before it walked the earth." Sarah's mouth drew dry. "Why? Why would he do that?" "Because your species was at a crossroads. The violence of your empires, the separation of your tribes, the hunger for power, it threatened your survival. The time had come to seed a different path. Love, compassion, unity, not as an idea, but as a living example." Sarah felt chills race down her arms. She remembered passages from the Gospels, the words about loving one's enemies, turning the other cheek, the radical forgiveness that had always seemed so impossible. He demonstrated what all human beings are capable of when their consciousness awakens. The healings you call miracles, the multiplication of food, even the rising from death, These were not violations of natural law. They were applications of universal principles of consciousness, the same principles your species will one day learn to use. Sarah's breath caught. You're saying anyone could do what Jesus did? Not immediately, Zara said gently, but eventually. That was his true message, that the same divine essence he embodied also lives within you. His life was not meant to be worshipped as unattainable, but practiced as a model of your own potential. Sarah stared at the floor, her thoughts a whirlwind. If this is true, she thought, everything changes. Zara's mental voice softened, like a hand resting on Sarah's shoulder. We have records of his mission. He was not alone. Throughout his life, he communicated with our consciousness networks, receiving guidance on how to best serve humanity. What you call his prayers were often transmissions, direct exchanges between worlds, meant to keep his mission aligned. Sarah swallowed hard. You mean Jesus spoke with aliens? He spoke with evolved consciousness that transcend planets. We do not think of ourselves as aliens. We are simply part of a larger living network that spans the galaxy. Your world is one of many. You are not alone, and you never have been. Sarah's eyes brimmed with tears. For the first time since the encounter began, she felt something other than fear. She felt hope. You're saying he wasn't here to condemn us? She whispered. He was here to show us who we really are. Exactly, and to remind you that your story is far from over. The hum in the room deepened. Sarah felt a warmth in her chest, like a quiet fire igniting. Jesus was one of many. Buddha, Krishna, prophets you know by other names. Many were starseeds too, souls who came to guide. But Jesus' mission was unique. He came at a critical moment when your species was ready to globalize his teachings. His work planted a seed that is still growing. Sarah felt as if the walls around her old beliefs were dissolving. She had never imagined her faith expanding instead of breaking. But here it was, stretching wider, encompassing stars and worlds and a God far greater than she had been taught to picture. What happens now? She asked, her voice barely audible. Zara's luminous eyes glimmered with something like compassion and urgency. Now, Sarah, you must decide what to do with what you've learned, for soon others will know, and the truth will change everything.